Hello, everybody, and welcome to Occult Wednesday, which happens if I don't have a tabletop session on Saturdays, which at the moment unfortunately happens quite often. It's not that I hate doing Occult Wednesdays, it's just that I do like having tabletop sessions and spending time with my friends. Anyway, this Saturday did not happen, hence why you get to see me telling you about occult stuff on Wednesdays. Hooray! Anyway, believe it or not, but I do watch other creators on YouTube, and one of the creators that I kind of like watching from time to time is Alyssa Grenfell, which is more of an atheist YouTuber that talks a lot about her experience growing up in the Mormon church, because I do like listening about other religions as well. And this is also why we have this is kind of weird camera angle right now, because I am about to switch on what should have been done in editing, but I'm gonna be doing it live while recording, because thank you OBS for allowing me to just set image files to either visible or invisible. So this is kind of like a shitty presentation style sort of video, but it saves Mirta on editing, and I love nothing more than some nice saving on editing. Anyway, so Alyssa Grenfell has, like, at the moment, 10 days ago, done this video called Answering the Web's Most Searched Questions About Mormonism. And she called out where she had gotten the inspiration from, so I was like, you know what, it would be kind of fun to also call out where I got my inspiration from. This way, Mirta. The camera is like a mirror. It's not a direct translation of where my body parts lie. So this way for the image. So that was my inspiration for the video, and I thought, hey, what is the internet asking about demonolatry? It turns out, fuck all, because that's not a very, known part of religions and faiths. So I kind of Googled around. There isn't even a lot of questions about Satanism of all things, even though those people are quite prominent, especially atheist Satanists with their very political campaigns. So I turned to what do people online ask about demons, and well, people on Google do ask pretty interesting questions about demons, and I thought, hey, that can be a video on its own. So first of all, let's just switch off this image and turn on this image, which is, what do people ask about demonolators or demonolatry? And like you can see, not many things come up in the autocomplete, because not that many people are Googling about it. So then, what does a demonolator mean? Whoever was trying to search for that term, it means demon worshipper. Not every demonolator goes with the worship tag, because some would prefer to say that they work with demons, but that legitimately is literally what the word in itself means. What is demonology about? The demonology is just the act of researching demons. Normally, when somebody says demonology, what they mean is also Western Christian interpretation of demons. Oftentimes, if somebody introduces themselves as a demonologist, they don't mean that they experience it from practical side of view, and they also most of the time don't mean any demons outside of the Western, very Christian-centric understanding of demon. What do demonologists do? Well, with that one, they tend to research demons because, once again, this tag just literally means a person that's researching something theoretically, not practically, while demonolatrists and demonolatry is to do with demon worship. That's the difference. A lot of people that say that they're a demonologist online mean like pseudo-exorcist level also, which doesn't necessarily come into the title. If you introduce yourself as a demonologist, the only thing I can assume is that you're researching them mostly from a Christian-centric and Western-centric point of view. That was all of the questions about demonolatry. Like, one question was about demonolatry, the rest were not. No matter how I switched the search terms, on Google, not a lot of people are Googling it, therefore autocomplete doesn't even complete, even remotely in the right direction. So let's move on to, can demons? And this is quite a large questionnaire. I crossed out one of them, mostly because that was to do with an anime. And I also, fair warning, there were actually some questions that are coming from Hindus and from Hindu religion. I took them out because simply I am not an expert on Hinduism. Therefore, I can't really tell you what it is in their faith, what it is in their religion, how the whole thing works. So anything mentioning like Krishna or Vishnu or all of the questions to do with Hinduism and demons, not in this video. This is not the video for you. You might want to find the person that can talk from that religious and cultural standpoint. Those are the only questions that I removed. Everything else is what I just found people asking on Google from the, autocomplete lines that Google gives you, because these are the things that they're guessing people are searching because these are the most searched terms. I am also answering as myself, meaning as a practitioner of demonolatry and how I understand my own faith, not as a person that will try and find justification for these sentences and statements in like specific other religious books to go, well, this mythology says this mythology says that. There's gonna be a little bit of that, but not all that much. So, one, can demons be good? Good and evil requires a person to judge it. It is a subjective judgment passed by somebody. When we talk about demons, just like when we're talking about gods, oftentimes we're talking about a personification that is almost in charge. In charge would be the wrong word because you are now imagining a person, more like they are what their area is. It's kind of like asking, can a cloud be good? Well, it's a cloud. Can a demon of sudden infant death syndrome be good? That would be Lilith. Well, it's kind of a thing that happens in our reality, and from our point of view, it is bad because we like our children. But if we were to step out of ourselves, death happens, disease happens, sudden infant death syndrome happens. It is hard to pass a judgment onto it the same way as you wouldn't really pass a judgment onto an earthquake, and wouldn't really call an earthquake evil because it isn't like there is a little imp sitting there causing the earthquake. It's a bit like it is a personification of the force of the earthquake itself, and we personify because it is easier for us to understand things when we make it look a bit more like us. Therefore, technically, I would say good and evil are labels that shouldn't be applied when it goes kind of beyond us looking at ourselves or at each other and going, oh, this action is good, this action is evil. If I was to liken it to something, it would be legitimately like, what you're trying to do is you're trying to pass judgment onto a cloud. Can demons repent? Repent for what? Repent to whom? If we take all spiritualities as being correct and existing simultaneously, not a single one would have a hold on reality, and not a single one would be dictating its exact rules. Therefore, this is another one of those questions that wouldn't quite apply. It's like asking, can a cloud repent for raining? And to be fair, that kind of thought process was not exactly uncommon in medieval times when you would see very like human lecturing towards animals and parts of nature, but we're in the 21st century now. I would assume that we have more understanding than just that. Can demons be redeemed? The same thing as before. Would you expect a cloud to redeem itself after raining a big storm? Would you expect an earthquake to redeem itself? Or is it just parts of reality that are? And we're interacting it from our tiny little understanding because we're bodied. We're not part of the great cloud of energy, and we're obviously not embodying any concept unless we're trying to really deepen our understanding into concept and then trying to align with that concept and trying to live a life that would get us the closest to a specific concept as we can get. Can demons reproduce? If you go by Christian mythology, technically Nephilim are a thing where like angels went away from heaven and had children with human wives, and then they were gravely punished for it. If you go by that standing, then yeah, but chances are that what those words actually meant was that they produced great men, like learned, educated men that learned a lot about new technologies such as weapons and then waged wars and self-destructed. At some point that got warped into giants, because sometimes when we want to say great men, we say big men, tall men, giant men. Like we're putting something on a pedestal and out of it a species came. So by that story, sorta, are you actually gonna legitimately be having ghost babies? No. That would kind of contradict a lot of very, very popular religion that do believe that Jesus was started with part human and part ghost Holy Spirit thing that impregnated this girl. But if you ask me, ghost babies is not something that we observe happening. So no. Can demons enter churches? Well, bodiless intelligence outside of time and space can equally exist everywhere and nowhere at once. If the question is, do some people at church pray to something else than what the church believes in and feels the support of their spirits as they're sitting there either by social obligation or because they're not safe or old enough to be out of the closet, so to say, then yes. There are actually written accounts of people going, will it be okay if I go to church? What happens if I go to church? Nothing happens. Attending another spiritual ceremony insincerely does actually nothing to your own personal spirituality, so it seems. So yes, a lot of people. Let's not say that like a large percentage of Christians are fake Christians, but more let's say that demonolators that absolutely have to hide their religion, which would be a large percentage of people that are also trying to assimilate and integrate into the culture of the area surrounding them, which sometimes includes going to church, do so insincerely and pray to their own spirits and feel the support of their own spirits, having the exact same experience in church, just with the wrong spiritual force. So yes, demons can enter churches. Enter because, well, bodiless intelligence outside of time and space. How do you measure what enter is? Can demons speak in tongues? Well, isn't speaking in tongues just having a bit of spiritual psychosis inside a church? I know that that's a bit mean, but that is legitimately what people do. Like, they get so much into the spirit that when they're told to speak from their heart, they're told to just yammer, and they will yammer things that don't make any logical sense. And they consider this to be like a language, or like this thing that predated all the languages. But you're not really convincing me. Would a spirit just blabber at you randomly the way that people do in churches? No, because there's literally no point. You wouldn't understand that. That wouldn't be very useful. Can, yes, do, no. I mean, a lot of spiritual interaction is through intuition. It is through meditation and watching what kind of thoughts come into your head when you meditate and when you think about the spirit. It isn't exactly hearing a voice. A lot of people do tell me that I am insane for being spiritual. A lot of like atheists will come in and, say that this is delusion or mental illness. I keep on needing to explain that spiritual people perceive the kind of spiritual support as intuition, as their own thoughts, as signs in the waking world, as finding the right thing at the right time after you asked for it. How do you receive a sign in gibberish? Is your sign suddenly Simlish? Because that would count as speaking in tongues, I suppose. Can demons pretend to be God? There are people that really, really buy into this idea of trickster spirits, which is, oh, it wasn't my God that I was speaking to, it was another spirit pretending to be my God. In my opinion, buying into such paranoia is gonna do absolutely nothing good to your own spiritual practice. So a lot of people get afraid, they get some sort of mental break, and they suddenly go, oh, it was demons, it was trickster spirits. If you're trying to meditate on a specific spirit, be it an angel, be it a demon, be it a god, there's absolutely no reason to think that you would get something that isn't that spirit. Outside of maybe you're having an OCD brain or a bad day, or your emotions get in the way, or you're having really, really low self-esteem, and you're interpreting your own self-deprecating thoughts as something that's coming from a higher place or a higher power, in which case spirituality is gonna be a negative, net negative in your life, as now you're putting a spiritual label to these self-deprecating thoughts, which is definitely not what you should be doing. So in my opinion, there isn't a spirit out there that would see a reason to pretend to be something that it isn't to you. And I have never witnessed a proof otherwise, outside of some already very paranoid people that are already very love and light, and one day they go, oh, it wasn't angels that I was speaking to, it was demons. And then they kind of have this jolt and they jump back, and then they're like, oh, you can't contact the angels at all, and anything that you contact must be evil, and that sort of, that kind of very paranoid spirituality. That for some reason always comes out from love and light communities. Yeah, so if you ask me, no. So next question is specifically in Demon Slayer, which might honestly explain the can demons reproduce bit, but I was gonna take it from a biblical point of view anyway. I suppose some people would genuinely have that question that isn't related to Demon Slayer. We're skipping any anime or manga questions, that's why they're crossed out. Can demons use breathing techniques? A bodiless intelligence is bodiless by default. It's spirit. It's kind of how we define spirit. There are no lungs to breathe with. No? Can demons eat human food? A bodiless intelligence is bodiless by default. Their spirit, there is no stomach to eat with. No? People do offer food on their altars. Normally it is either A, because it corresponds to the spirit and makes them think about the spirit, therefore it makes their meditation easier, or B, it is a gratitude thing. Like, hey, I am grateful. In my culture, what we do is we share food with those that we appreciate. Therefore, I am sharing a part of my meal. Now, depending on the culture that you're from, you might just like leave it for 10 minutes, like, say your thanks, and then eat it in order to not produce any kind of food waste, because that is a concern. Or you would then behave as if the spirit has took your food, and of course you're not gonna eat what another guest has already ate, and then you would throw that away. So it entirely depends on what you value as a person, how you treat your offerings. But yeah, offering food is a thing, but you're not gonna have like a man pop out from like underneath the desk and just go that's not a thing that happens. Moving on to a different direction. Do demon worship? I wanted to ask, do demon worshippers, but once again, demon worshippers are not really a term that's used on Google, therefore you can't really do that, nothing pops up. So what ended up happening is a whole bunch of questions of, what do demons worship and do demons believe in God? The way that we classify spirit is fairly random and changes like century to century. So right now a lot of people have this idea of one granddaddy god that is the god. It is not necessarily the case. Some cultures have a head god, other cultures don't really have a head god, they just have a plenty of gods. Even the cultures that have a head god would normally have plenty of gods underneath it, either as those gods' children or something similar. It depends how, the world creation story grows and what culture you belong to. So even like God, it's gods, depends where you come from. Then we sometimes like take some of those gods and like throw them into the basket of demon, or like grab some nature spirits and throw them into the basket of demon. Demon for the longest time, and daemon, which was a wise spirit, it wasn't really an evil spirit, so we kind of flipped that definition. We added some things into it, like poltergeists, which used to be, a noisy ghost. It is really a grab bag of a classification, and it was classified entirely by people. And what we put in this classification shifts time to time. Therefore, traditionally, in some cultures, do some gods worship other gods? Well, technically, some gods are under other gods, right? So now if you take one of those gods and they weren't head god and you place them into the basket of demon, technically the answer is yes, whatever the head god of that culture is. As a random grab bag, how are you gonna answer that question? That's a bit like asking, does grass worship the trees? Do the trees worship the ground? Does the ground worship the river? In my opinion, that is not a very productive way of seeing the world. So kind of just like see it as flatline, baseline. You can interact with whatever religion you want, and it doesn't neatly need to fit in human definitions of hierarchy where something has to be absolutely at the top controlling the whole thing. So really, see, this answer kind of depends on which demon in particular, how do you classify demons, by which religion and culture do you go by, and what is your personal attitude. My own personal attitude would be no, because I see it all as separate. Like I said, grass wouldn't really worship the ground. The ground wouldn't necessarily worship the grass. They kind of just exist, really, you know. Moving on. What do demons? What do demons look like? Well, bodiless intelligences can really give you any kind of imagery when you're meditating in your mind, and they wouldn't really look like anything much. But if you want to go for like classical definitions, we have the Lesser Key of Solomon, which is a grimoire that only really dates back to Middle Ages, something like 15th, maybe 14th century. We do know that there were other books that it got taken from, but it was a bit like playing broken telephones, like things would get scrambled along the way as one grimoire was copied into another grimoire, and we can see that a lot of them have like a common root, but aren't exactly like related, which suggests that they do come from like some sort of common book at the bottom that just kind of got copied in different ways. But in the Lesser Key of Solomon, you can get a couple of descriptions. And then we also have Dictionary Infernal, and the author of that book decided to do little comic book interpretations, like how they themselves see those spirits that won't necessarily fit the definition of Lesser Key of Solomon, and it was meant to be a caricature, but I thought it was interesting to show you guys. This is pictured directly from Wikipedia. You can wiki this thing. These illustrations are, they are caricatures, but they are pretty, and once again, they are a reinterpretation of the author, isn't exactly the written word, but they're pretty. So if you want an idea of like a drawn image of a demon, you can like go and take a look there. It won't be like exactly exact, but it will give you an idea about what it looks like, which is like miles away from our own attitudes of what a demon is supposed to look like right now, because normally people like think like this red-skinned guy with like horns and hooves sometimes. It kind of shifts with time, because now it starts to become just like scary, black, incomprehensible boogeyman with like big claws or whatever. It changes with the pop media and the culture. If you want a more traditional interpretation, that's one place to look at. What do demons eat? I don't think that eat really applies to spirits. That might be hard to imagine, but if we're thinking, the spirit of water, the spirit of earth, the spirit of us, what do ideas eat? Do ideas eat for you? Do they need to eat? The answer will be personal, whoever you're gonna ask, but that's the way that you should really conceptualize it. You shouldn't be conceptualizing another civilization of people, because that's not what it is. What do demons do? Well, I don't imagine it is much doing, per se, what do you do when you embody a concept and you in yourself are that concept? When we think about Hades, Hades is technically our personification of his area, but Hades is also a place. It would be good to also apply that to other beings. Like, they're a concept, but they're also a personification of a thing. So that is really up to your imagination. What does knowledge do? Does it just collect? Does it experience it? Does it just spread itself? What does love do? Does love just feel? Does love infect from person to person? It's, you should really, really be thinking not in terms of astro people, but in terms of concepts. And when you start thinking that abstractly, it will be very, very, very hard to answer that question. What does creativity do? I don't know, you tell me. Does creativity experience itself endlessly? Or is creativity just a flow that we added a name? What does a river do? Does a river experience the flowing, or is a river just a river? You know, it's that sort of thing. What do demons look like in the Bible? No, not like much. The concept of demon in itself, once again, it's pretty new. It wasn't really there 2,000 years ago. A lot of the things that we now consider to be demon would be things that are mentioned in passing, like all those Baals and Astaroths. They were talking about gods, by the way. Astaroth is Astarte, and Baal was Lord, whatever was, the god lord of the land that they're talking about. You can't worship, God and Mammon at the same time. Mammon is just a word for money. That wasn't even like a being. So they didn't really look like much. The ones that were named were gods of other cultures. And some of them we invented along the way. But if you're talking about gods of other cultures, you could probably Google whatever's remaining. Perhaps statues, perhaps some worship elements. Sometimes nothing is remaining, so we should be very thankful about one very, very warring religion, because in their hatred of other religions, they have preserved names and definitions that otherwise might have been lost to time. So I suppose, and silver lining is, thank you for that. What do demons want? The same way, once again, as I can answer the question of what do demons do. What does creativity want? What does knowledge want? In general, probably just perpetuation of itself. I imagine that in whichever area creativity is used, creativity as a concept would benefit, because in a way, the concept gets to live on and spread. Doesn't necessarily need to involve us. It merely needs to involve a concept. And for as long as concept exists, it doesn't really matter how we personify it. It's still there. I don't really believe that you should be thinking want as in, person wants. That's to experience something when you're living. What do demons wear? Well, without a body, you don't really need to wear anything because there's nothing to wear it on. For a lot of people, their personification will be fairly personal, what they see in their dreams, what they see in their meditation. Sometimes the same being will feel familiar in your meditation, in your dreams, even if they appear as different things. Sometimes those things could be clothed. But it is not like if you're having an image projected of someone, you're gonna be asking, oh, is that cotton or silk? That's not a thing that you would be thinking about when you're meditating on the concept of a spirit and you're visualizing that spirit, and that spirit appears in your mind's eye or in your dream. That sort of thing. I hope that clarifies a lot of things. I think I'm gonna leave a lot more people more confused than they came in, because it takes a while to switch to that kind of thinking. Whoopsie daisy, we already saw that picture, it's why I arranged it that way. Now we have the last bit, which is why demons? Why demons speak Latin? Well, really they don't. We have associated Latin with church services, with like this holy language, this like uplifted language, but it's not. The first Bible wouldn't even be written in Latin. If you would be experiencing a language that you don't understand in your meditations, in your thoughts, in your dreams, it is more likely to belong to the culture that the being originated in before it was thrown into the basket of demons. So dreaming in Arabic wouldn't be too uncommon. It is fairly rare for anyone to say that in their meditation they have received Latin. If they would receive Latin, it wouldn't be just Latin. Thoughts in your own language count too. So really perceive spiritual as being a bit above language that communicates in signs and signals and your own thoughts, which will be in whichever language and whichever culture you were born on for the most part, until your brain like short circuits and gives you some phrases in languages that you haven't heard before, and then you start Googling it and figure out that it's Arabic, and then you go down the rabbit hole and you're like, oh, the being who's like considered a demon, he originated here, you know. That sometimes happens, but it's one of those things that are a bit reality blurring for a lot of people as an experience, because they're like, oh, I haven't really heard this anywhere, and I kind of had this like meditation thought or vision or whatever and came in a different language. Like that is very, very significant for people, and normally you can like dismiss it off, you must have heard it somewhere. It's not like you're living in a closed box. You go on Google, there are the news channels, you definitely have came across this language before. It could have just been sitting at the back of your mind somewhere and you randomly pulled it forth. So, you know, that's the whole outside versus inside thing. Like when we're conceptualizing spirituality as atheistic or theistic, is everything coming from your mind and you're simply trying to embody concepts. And that's how the spirituality is helping, because effectively you are projecting your own thoughts onto a concept, which creates and lets you arrive at a different answer than you would normally arrive if you weren't doing that, or whether it is actually thought coming from the outside. Both stances, I don't see anything wrong with either of them. I definitely believe that my husband would see the theistic stance as being very, very, very kooky. But, you know, as long as you're not harming anyone, it's fine to have a little kook in you. And of course, as long as you're not harming yourself or entertaining like mental illnesses, that would be my biggest concern. Anything above that, it's fine to be a little bit kooky. There's nothing wrong with that. Why do demons want souls? They don't, really. We like to make promises. We like to be dedicated. And when we're practicing a specific spirituality, we would want to believe that we belong in it even after death. So what happens is that a lot of people will make promises like, I am eternally here, you know, I have sworn myself for all eternity, and big religions kind of do it too. And when fear-mongering is involved, the idea of you're being stolen from the good religion, which is ours, by force, because this boogeyman asks for you unconditionally, the same way as we are doing actually, but we are portraying ourselves as the good guys. That's where this fear-mongering that, you know, demons want your souls come from. I think if you look at practicing demon worshippers, demonolatrists, and you look at percentage of people that believe that they eternally belong to like this very specific being or camp by saying that, I made a pact, I made an agreement, like, because I want this. I want to belong to this and to this being in particular. The percentage of people that actually have done that would probably not be that big. But once again, it's not all that different to going, I want to be eternally Jesus's, or I want to eternally belong to like this afterlife. And it isn't really seen as this spooky thing. It is seen as something that you desire because, of course, you perceive your own spirituality as good, and you perceive your own path as good, and you perceive it as helping you, and therefore you see it to leading to a happy conclusion. It is only people from a different spirituality that will absolutely insist that your spirituality can't have a happy conclusion. I'm sorry I keep on showing you a bottle of vapor rub. It's in my hand because I've been having a migraine. And normally you're supposed to like put this on your chest when you're having like chest coughs or anything. Vapor rub smells really, really minty. And it honestly does nice things to my brain when I am having a migraine. At the very least, it calms me down because smell good. I should probably put it down. It is kind of weird to be waving it around for 40 minutes. I'm sorry. Where was I? Oh yeah. So it is normally other religions that go, we good, you bad. Our outcome good. Your outcome cannot be good because our outcome good and our outcome trump your outcome, because how else are we gonna get more followers? So that's where it originates from. Next one. Why demons have horns? Well, let me introduce you to an image of Pan. We have really conflated Pan with demons at some point, and satyrs in particular, which is supposed to be like almost a half horse, half person, getting close to centaur, but they kind of didn't have like the full half of the horse. They kind of just had the front legs. That is how Pan is portrayed. He would have these like little horns, and he would like have like cloven feet, and he would have like a lot of fur down there, like a bit like a sheep. We have conflated this image with the idea of the devil. Therefore, in a lot of stories worldwide where the devil appears, they're this hooved man with horns. That's Pan. The reason why demons have horns is literally Pan. We just copy-pasted the image. Blame the cultural progression for taking a god Pan and mixing it into demons, and it becoming the stereotypical portrayal, like you saw before from Dictionary Infernal, when you're really like portraying what is written like Lesser Key of Solomon, even not accurately. You don't really have this like stereotypical like portrayal of Pan. Like compare Pan with this. Like you have some sort of peacock man, a person with like several different heads, a fly, because that was the symbolism for Beelzebub. You don't have that stereotypical look of like horned head and cloven feet. When you're expecting stereotypical look, in your meditation you can conjure a stereotypical look, which over time we also painted red. We shaved it, painted it red, effectively, and we're probably progressing a bit past that because now, like, once again, black spooky ookies with like big claws are like a popular portrayal, but it's all cultural, it's all media. It's something that changes over time. It doesn't make it so, like, it doesn't set it as what it is. Why do demons hate humans? Well, why does Earthquake hate humans? It probably doesn't. It just is. I mean, earthquake make ground shake, sometime building collapse, river run, and all sorts of horrible things happen when earthquake make ground shake. Earthquake make ground shake not because it has a personal vendetta against you. Interpreting natural forces like that would be a little bit unhinged, and some people go a bit too deep into that interpretation, because what ends up being is that life in itself starts having like some sort of boogeyman. Like, my life must be bad because of boogeyman. If I gave in to boogeyman and gave my soul, I would have bad outcome instead of this other religion that has good outcome, because obviously that's the only way that it can go. But my life would be good because I gave me to the boogeyman that really wants me. And then like you have all those conspiracy theories, of like which celebrities sold themselves to the devil. And sometimes people come to spirituality and be like, I would do anything to be like that celebrity. I would give myself to the devil and I would die at 27, as if that is some sort of weird requirement. Like, just the boogeyman pops up from the ground and they go, sign this and you'll die at 27 and you're gonna be a celebrity and then you will be eternally mine. Ha 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 ha. But we do have our own little, fun. After all, Faust is a story. A lot of people enjoy it. It's once again, it's media, it's culture, it's fiction, it's things that we wrote, that over time built itself into this weird idea. Well, let me tell you this way. There isn't some sort of boogeyman that hates your existence. There are some books that will tell you that there is. There is often a negative character and a positive character. In Islam, for example, their devil Iblis refused to bow down to people because, from their perspective, they were younger than them and made from inferior materials, and God really scorned them for it and like threw them out of heaven, and that's where like the hatred and trying to like bring it down began. But in general, there isn't like some sort of boogeyman out there trying to get you. And that boogeyman is not like some sort of conscious being that will allow your world to turn around the moment when you sign yourself over. Let me tell you, there's plenty of demon worshippers that majority of all people, that are in fairly bad situations in life. They might be trans and really struggling with it. They might have drug addictions and really struggling with it. They might be poor and really struggling with it. They might have health conditions that they were born with and really struggling with it. I, for example, am poor, and I have health conditions that I was born with, which made it very, very hard for me to hold down a normal 9-to-5 job, which really made me struggle with it and kind of caused me being poor in the first place. Me being spiritual has nothing to do with it. But it is quite infuriating that because my religion is not in the majority, if I was to die early, a lot of people would be like, oh, it's because of her spirituality. Completely ignoring that I was born with quite a lot of very serious health conditions and that I had them way before I was ever spiritual. So it is quite angering knowing that, hey, if I get unlucky and my life just ends because something happens to my heart or whatever, which can happen. I'm having migraines all the time. I could literally just have an aneurysm one day. It can happen. It won't necessarily happen, but there is a chance that it does. And whatever age that happens at, like 37, 48, 52, whatever, no matter what age it happens at, unless I'm very, very ancient, people would be like, oh, that's because she worshipped demons. There are already like people that go, oh, you have these problems in life because you selected your spirituality wrong. If you just came to Jesus, you would be like instantly healed and you wouldn't have to deal with it. And it's like, mate, that's not how genetics works. And that's like a really, really bad thing to sell to people in general. Like, join my religion and your life would be great. And the reason why your life isn't great is because you're part of the wrong religion. There isn't such a thing as the wrong religion. Stop trying to pressure other people by trying to play on their weak points and insecurities. That doesn't make you a nice person. That makes you a pretty shitty person, especially considering that when they do join your religion, if that doesn't happen, it's because they're not devout enough. They don't give enough money to the church. They don't maybe they just committed too much sin, because there's also very, very devout people in specific religions that are suffering. People will always find explanations why you're suffering. It will always be something that you did or something that you're doing wrong. It is always your fault. It can't be just life. And it is just life. So don't imagine a little boogeyman that's trying to pester you and hate you because, you exist here. It's not what's making your life hard. If there's anyone actually making your life hard, it most likely would be other people. But sometimes it's not even other people. Sometimes life is just hard. You can be born into a shitty body and your life would be hard by default, even if nobody else was ever involved in it. And the last question that we have over here is, why do demons hate God? Well, they don't. I mean, some of them are technically gods in some of those mythologies, especially mythologies that have a god and an anti-god. You're gonna find reasons outlined for that specific mythology, but once again, you're taking a very human conceptualized just grab bag of things and you're trying to ask about this whole thing that is very, very random in itself, and you're like, why do this whole thing that's very random in itself act specifically like this? Normally the answer is because, well, it doesn't really. It's another one of those projections. Does grass hate ground? Does ground hate grass? Does the tree have an opinion about the river that's right next to it? Did the clouds passing by have any thoughts? Would they like to share it with us right now? It's those levels of questions, and it is because there are quite a lot of mythologies that will be pitting a god and anti-god. Those mythologies will have their own reasons for why these gods and anti-gods, why they're fighting. But if you're looking at a whole grab bag, they're not really. Some people will also project their own religious trauma going forth, because exiting one religion, entering another. Religious trauma happens quite often. I was quite lucky to spend 15 years an atheist, which allowed me to unravel a lot of my hate far before entering another spirituality. Unfortunately, it does make atheists perceive me as absolutely batshit crazy for actually entering another spirituality, but what can you do? Other people won't always have positive opinions about your life decisions, but screw them, because it's not their life to live. Do what makes you happy, do what keeps you healthy, find balance, don't go completely batshit crazy, don't try, brick your neighbor's window and then take a shit there because your new spirituality told you to. That would honestly be a very unhealthy thought, and I would be very, very concerned that you had that thought that it was divinely inspired, and then decided to actually go ahead and do it. That would be more of an equivalent of having some sort of mental illness, not being spiritual, but no, in general, do what makes you happy. If that is being spiritual, good. If that is dressing up as a goblin and pretending that you steal spoons from your own drawers, good. Nobody needs to know that. Nobody needs to comment on it. What matters is that, it makes you happy. So, I suppose that would be a very happy note to end on. It is already a 55-minute video. If you have any questions yourself, feel free to just ask them in the comment section down below, and perhaps one day I could make a part 2, which is, what YouTube would like to know about demons and demonolatry. What's like, for example, what people are asking for repeatedly on Demonolatry Practices Reddit is a lot different than what people are asking on Google. Google seems to get a lot more simplistic questions that are very much not practice-based, and that makes absolute sense, because the only way that people are touching the subject is through popular media, not like as a actual spiritual practice. Anyway, before I sign off, I am gonna say I do have a Patreon, and I do call out my very generous $3 supporters, because there are a few. I'm very thankful for them. Some people even give me more money than that. I call out the like $3 tier on my Daggerfall videos normally. I'm not pasting them into my occult videos. The reason why I'm not doing so is because my occult videos are a bit controversial. It's not gonna be everyone's cup of tea. There's gonna be quite a few negative comments there. I don't want like people that have nothing to do with it involved. So if you want to be called out on like actual feel-good like gaming videos, then feel free to go and give me $3. I get like nothing for doing these. I'm doing it entirely for fun. So if you want to say a thank you, that is a way of doing it. Another way of saying thank you is just liking it, subscribing, or leaving a comment, because that helps with the algorithm, or actually just watching the video. I'm already thankful you have just decided to dedicate 57 minutes of your time. Freaking hell. I hate that I can see for how long I've been recording, to just listen to me ramble on. So really, I hope that I'm gonna see you on my other videos, especially my gaming videos, because I'm trying to do those at the moment twice a week. So 2 streams a week, with one occult ramble here when I don't have the tabletop. It is a shame that I don't have the tabletop often, but hey, it allows me to give in and ramble about occulty topics. Sometimes it doesn't work out, especially if I have a migraine or a bad health day, or I start breaking out into fevers, which does happen quite a bit, because once again, Mirta has an extra shitty health and there's nothing really to do about it. I'm just kind of taking it easy and taking care of myself, which is the best thing that I can do, really. So sometimes I plan and plans don't come to fruition, but in an ideal week, this is what you're getting. You're getting like 2 gaming videos and 1 rambly occulty video. So if you want to stick around this channel for that, me thankies, and thank you for watching, and I hope I'm gonna see you next time, either in my rambly occulty videos or, on my gameplay videos, because it's appreciated. It's fun. It's fun to share things with people. So thank you, and see ya!